George Foreman passed away on March 21st, 2025. He was 76 years old. George was one of the best boxers in history. His devastating punching power led to him knocking out 68 of his opponents. He also was a two-time heavyweight champion as well as an Olympic gold medalist. Most people know George Foreman as a smiling face with self-deprecating humor that they'd gotten used to seeing when his George Foreman grills were selling like hotcakes. They also know him as the man who decided to name all 5 of his sons George after him. However, people of a certain age know a much different George Foreman. This George Foreman was intimidating, powerful, and one of the baddest men on the planet. In fact, for nearly 2 years, when he won the heavyweight title the first time, he was the baddest man on the planet. George Foreman's life was one of escape, success, disappearing from the public eye, then reappearing as a changed man. George Edward Foreman was born on January the 10th, 1949 in Marshall, Texas. Growing up as a troubled youth in the 5th Ward in Houston, Texas, George quit school when he was only 15. For a while, he resorted to petty crime to try to make ends meet. Wanting something better for himself, when he was 16, he asked his mother to sign him up for Job Corps. This decision changed Foreman's life because he found boxing as a result of the training he received in Job Corps. About 3 years later, through hard work and training, Foreman became one of the best young boxers in America. As a result, he won the gold medal for heavyweight boxing at the 1968 Olympic Games. In 1969, he turned pro and started his career by knocking out his first opponent. In his first year as a professional, doing something you would never hear of anybody doing now, Foreman had 13 fights. He started out his career with 37 consecutive wins. This lined him up for a shot at the heavyweight title against the champion Joe Frazier. Despite being the underdog, Foreman knocked Frazier down 6 times in only 2 rounds. He dominated Frazier, easily winning the fight and taking his belt. A historic call that many have heard came from this fight. When ABC rebroadcast the fight, Howard Cosell uttered the now famous phrase, "Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier." Even though Foreman only had 2 successful defenses of his title, one of them was against another power puncher in Ken Norton. Norton was the man who had broken Muhammad Ali's jaw just a year earlier. That didn't faze Foreman though, as Big George wobbled Norton early in the 2nd round, which for all intents and purposes ended the fight. After 40 straight wins, Foreman's next fight was against Muhammad Ali in the historic Rumble in the Jungle. This time, Foreman was the favorite to win, by virtue of his devastating knockouts of both Frazier and Norton in quick fashion. However, Ali defeated Foreman not only with superior speed and quickness, he also employed his now famous rope-a-dope strategy to tire Foreman out. An exhausted George was knocked out by Ali in round 8, losing his heavyweight title. In 1977, following a fight with Jimmy Young, Foreman had what he later described as a near-death experience. After this, Foreman became a born-again Christian and informally retired from boxing. He then became a minister, first preaching on street corners, then eventually heading a more formal church. He also opened a youth center. This event would lead to one of the most remarkable comebacks in sports history. In 1987, 10 years removed from his last bout, Foreman surprised everyone by announcing a comeback. Foreman was 38 at the time and said that he was doing so because he wanted to raise money for his youth center. He no longer had the money to do so on his own, as much of what he'd earned in his career had already been spent on the center. This version of George Foreman looked much different than the one that everyone had last seen back in the 1970s. That version of him weighed between 220 and 225 pounds. He was muscular and he was in excellent shape. This new version, he was bald. He had packed on over 40 pounds since then. But most importantly, he still maintained his awesome punching power. As evidence, during his comeback, he knocked out the first 17 opponents he faced. This led to Foreman getting a shot at the title against undisputed champion Evander Holyfield in 1991. even though Foreman lost. Many people were amazed that the 42-year-old man was able to go the distance with the 29-year-old champion. George found time after this to star in a sitcom called George, where he played, of all things, surprisingly, a retired boxer. Boxing wasn't done with Foreman yet, though. In 1994, he'd get another shot at the heavyweight title, as this time he'd fight against Michael Moorer. Foreman was a huge underdog to Moorer, who was 19 years younger than him. We're going to take a short time out from our story to ask you to be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and repeat when it comes to our videos. Thanks for taking time to listen and to watch. Now back to our story. During the fight, after being outboxed for 9 rounds, Foreman shockingly knocked out Moorer with a short right hand. At 45 years old, 20 years after he first lost his title, Foreman had unexpectedly again reached the pinnacle of the heavyweight division. At the same time, he became an inspiration to people all over the world. Foreman would retire for good from boxing in 1997. After doing so, he continued to call fights for HBO. He also had a movie made about his life titled Big George Foreman, for which he served as executive producer. Of course, he also continued to make lots of money from the sales of his grills. Foreman initially got into the business because when he came out of retirement, he credited his healthy eating as a key to his success. As a result, a company looking for a spokesperson for their fat-reducing grills approached him. It was a match made in heaven, as the grills became a big seller. It's been estimated that Foreman earned hundreds of millions of dollars because of the affiliation. During his life, Foreman proved many things. When he was young, he proved that if you had a desire to, you could come from bad surroundings and still make something of yourself. As a young boxer, he proved that hard work and dedication combined with talent could take you around the world. When he surprised everyone and stopped boxing, he proved that he was open to a higher calling. And finally, when he came back and won the title, he proved that age was no limit to what a person could accomplish if they had the desire to do something. Thanks for the memories, Big George, and thanks for the lessons. Rest in peace.